Hello and welcome to episode 278 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 2nd of April 2019. If you can believe it, my name is Chris Thurston and tonight I'm joined by Philippa War.
Hello! I've
Auto-tuned Philippa War.
Missed the note. It's fine.
And Tom Francis.
Hello.
Who performs all of his own vocal stunts. Tom, you're back from GDC.
Yeah, I am.
Yep. Well, that's it. No, how was GDC?
I stepped over your follow-up question. It was great. It always is great. Mostly, like, for me, it's great because I get to see a load of friends who I don't normally see. And, I've heard it described as social crunch, which is accurate. Seeing loads of people all the time for 7 days straight. But I also did see some talks, and I wrote up one of the, probably the best one I saw actually was, Rich Wilson from Arcane talking about a Prey moon crash. And I've written that up on RPS, but talking about how that came about and the fact that, just like the process for like, how do you mix an immersive sim with a roguelike and why would you do that in the first place? And that the best part of that was, a very kind of, honest and revealing series of diagrams where he draws like, all of the dollar bills that represent the money you're spending on the game and then the path the player takes through them. And
right.
An immersive sim, in a linear game, it's like a big tall line and you get all the dollars. The player sees all the money you spent. And in an immersive sim, you're spreading it all over this big, wider field and the player's meandering through it with a wiggly path that misses a lot of what you're making. And then in a roguelike immersive sim, your player's going to take multiple paths through that space, so they end up seeing more of it.
Huh. And therefore picking up more golden coins and getting a higher score at the end. Because that's how game review works.
I also, there was a Q&A by, Epic about their store, it was weird. It wasn't in an especially big room and that room didn't even really fill up, I don't think. Which is bizarre because I would have thought that was, usually when there's something that's kind of relevant to all of us developers, then it absolutely fills up. But they reveal loads of like really specific concrete stuff, some of which was pretty surprising.
It might have been scheduled against something.
Yeah, perhaps. But so did any of you see the Metro sales figure?
No.
They say that Metro, the new one, Exodus, has sold on Epic 2.5 times what Last Light sold on Steam.
Huh.
Which is, I don't know, they didn't specify any more than that, so I don't know if they mean period for period or whether they're like how much it sold so far is how much is 2.5 times what Last Light has sold so far. That would be insane. But either stat is kind of insane. Like, I would have said that, okay, they probably got paid an insane amount of money to do this, but the sales themselves would have been way, way less than what they would have got on Steam.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I suppose it's hard to know what to attribute that to exactly. Like,
Did they actually attribute it to anything? Like, did they offer?
No, I think the implication was that it's because the Epic Store is awesome and they have loads of, they're doing everything right and everyone loves them.
I don't know what you were about to say, Chris, but like, obviously I have very specific knee-jerk things that are not that Epic is awesome and that they're doing a million things right. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, well, because just having briefly been, covered both Exodus and Last Light at various points during their development, there was definitely a much bigger push behind Exodus.
Yeah.
Like, it got a big E3 reveal. It was hyped for longer. It had a bigger marketing campaign.
I heard of it, which is
whereas
that's quite something.
Whereas Last Light, which is a good game, just sort of like Metro is an interesting one because it went from kind of like cult shooter no one heard of but people loved to being a big thing now, but it feels like it only just became a big thing. Yeah. So to some extent, the fact that it sold 2.5 times. Did they say exactly how many that is?
No.
Okay. Well, that's the thing, right?
Like, maybe it sold 2 copies and then a refund.
That's my caveat for this is that I think Last Light Metro was still like quite underground as kind of shooters went. And
literally.
Oh no, what have I done? That was completely unintentional and I must now retire from the podcast. Good night.
I couldn't do
Pip,
any more.
you're the host now.
Cool.
I couldn't do any more than clear my throat disapprovingly because I had a mouthful of whiskey at the time.
I think the other thing to bear in mind is that there still aren't the same number of games on Steam, and it got particular prominence. It was also in the news a lot because of the whole moving it from one platform to another, which was another round of essentially press coverage and word of mouth and reminders that it existed and was coming up, rather than just sort of disappearing in a sea of other releases. So,
in short, did they have any other big facts?
85 million Epic Store users, 40% of them don't have Steam, which I presume they know from their spyware.
Did they say that at the talk? No. That's one of those icebreaker
Although,
jokes.
Jesus Christ, the questions went pretty fucking hard on them.
Really?
There was a lot of the questions were themed around, hey, is Tencent making you do this? Because Tencent have a significant stake in Epic. One guy was just like on his Unreal Tournament bullshit and would not let it go. He was like, was it Tencent's decision to abandon the Unreal Tournament community? And like, awkward silence, a few chuckles around the room, and like, no, Tencent don't determine any of our business decisions. And they said Tencent has zero to do with the Epic Store. They're not in our office. Tim Sweeney doesn't take orders from anybody. And then the guy was like, so it was your decision to abandon the Unreal Tournament.
Oh, damn, Columbo's here. And he's furious about the Unreal Tournament.
But yeah, if it left it at that, it would have been quite snappy, but there was like 5 follow-up questions about how they'd abandoned Unreal Tournament and why they were terrible.
oh my god.
And the exclusives thing, a lot of people were pretty pissed off about that, and they really kind of, perhaps, presumably justifiably, sort of through, they didn't specify who, but somebody else involved with Metro, i.e. THQ probably, under the bus for, the thing where they were still selling Metro on the Steam store. Right. When it was going to be Epic exclusive, they said, we'll make sure that never happens again. But, you know, we had talked to them already and they knew that it was going to be Epic exclusive and it was their call to sell it still on Steam.
Yeah, right. Beep, beep, here comes the bus.
I guess, I wonder if that was to do with the fact that, the Epic Store wouldn't have had a wishlist function at that point. So, you know, wanting to take advantage of a particular feature on Steam and then, you know, thinking that they could just say, oh, well, it's only a digital distribution platform. Who gets that upset about those?
They were actually taking money for it, weren't they? It was pre-orders, which I think they then, allowed them to be refunded, but yeah.
I think they honoured them on Steam.
I can't remember where it was at that point. I think
they did. They weren't going to sell it, but they did honour it if you'd already paid for it.
Yeah. So actually that's not that bad. I mean, it's weird, but it's
it seems really weird if it was an exclusive that was kind of only sort of accidentally not quite an exclusive.
Yeah, actually I can imagine Epic being pissed off about that primarily because they just signed an exclusive deal and these guys are still selling it on a different store and those customers are actually going to get it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not exclusive, is it?
Yeah.
So the thing you did is not it.
Anyway, they say that exclusive thing is, I mean, Jesus Christ, their rhetoric around why they're doing this. Someone asked them why they're doing it, and that they honestly tried to claim that it wasn't self-interest, that they were, because their cut is better than Steam for developers, that the motive behind it is that they need to spread this cut to more people to make the whole development scene better for everybody, so they have to do exclusives to make that happen.
But surely if it was that great, developers would be doing it off their own bat.
Well, yeah.
Thanks.
Their phrase was, we're not trying to build an empire.
Then why bother doing it?
I think you actually stumbled into having an empire and then you decided to expand that empire and...
But hang on, if they don't want to build an empire, then stop doing it.
It's a terrible, unfortunate accident. We can't stop it. This empire just keeps happening.
Stop.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure all of history's imperial powers have used that line. The flag just fell here.
We actually hate owning these countries. We'd love to be out of it if we could.
If anything, it's tremendously hard for us.
Who are the real victims here? Probably Tim Sweeney.
Oh boy. Let's see what else. They say 25%. 25% of their game sales are coming through their kind of YouTuber streamer program, where if you basically if a streamer covers your game and gives some kind of referral code thing, then, when you buy the game, they get a kickback from it. And that kickback comes from Epic's cut, not the developers. Although the developer can optionally increase that cut, out of their own share. But yeah, 25% of their sales are coming from that.
So face-based affiliate linking, kind of.
Yep. Definitely no kind of quandaries to raise there. Just let that one go unregarded. About the impact that has on media.
And they also, the interesting thing is that it sounds like they don't actually want to, firstly, what they say, it's going to be human curated pretty much indefinitely. It's not going to become an open platform like Steam. And they said that when Steam reached around, like as Steam's library grew, they saw their own sales on Steam declining. And they said around 1,500 titles was when it really got, significant. And so they were sort of implying that was maybe the limit they reach, or they also said like, maybe when we get there, we'll see if there's, ways to expand without hurting the developers already there. But they're very much kind of trying to, I would say, feed into the, indie-pocalypse kind of fears and developers who are struggling to make it on Steam because there's just so much stuff there. They're trying to not do that.
Is that also not just a way of like trying to scoop people up as they panic? Basically saying you need to be in the first wave of a few hundred people because otherwise you'll get left behind and we won't bother with you.
Maybe, but they're also, I mean, they're not trying to persuade developers to come to them and ask to put their games on the store. I think they have way more developers than they need right now. They're very much gatekeeping and, only letting the things on that they especially want. They haven't asked me is what I'm saying.
Do you have a sense of like the spread of what's on there? Because I haven't been checking in on it. So like, I guess when you say human curated, the main concern I think I have there is, what groups would then be selected out, or what games would then suddenly not be represented.
Yeah. So I haven't looked at it lately, but I mean, obviously there's just the headline ones like Subnautica and Hades and, Slime Rancher, and, a lot of that stuff is either games that are already proven or developers that are already proven. And so it'll be interesting to see when they start. There was like, especially stuff that's made in Unreal.
Okay,
the engine.
That's
a lot of the stuff I've never heard of on the Epic Store is Unreal Engine stuff. Because I think they're extra keen to promote that for obvious reasons.
I wonder if they're keen to curate around the idea of Fortnite players then finding things they're interested in. Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be why they've made such a big push to have games free on there, right? Where Subnautica was free and Slime Rancher was free is they have this 80 million people, most of whom are used to playing a game just for free. And I think they want them to like say, okay, also free is this game, but if you'd like more like that, then
I think timed
pay.
Free also means that people have the incentive to log back in or check, check and see more things. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if and when they start picking games from unproven developers other than just Unreal Engine stuff, to see what their tastes are like. But it sounds like they are not going to even try to be open and inclusive and try and represent everything. They said something like, we do not intend to have porn or hate games on the store. And hate games, fair enough, but the definition of porn is going to be interesting to see where they draw the line on that.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're handpicking everything, then we'll never find out because they won't go anywhere near their line.
What was your lasting impression of it as a developer? Because obviously it's easy to kind of be critical of them, and important to be critical of them and their offering, but I'd be interested to know what your overall kind of takeaway was from it in terms of the mood.
Yeah, I don't have anything massive against them, really. I mean, honestly, the most off-putting thing is them trying to claim that it's all for altruistic reasons, which is such like thinly veiled bullshit. But in terms of like as a platform, like I previously said I wouldn't do that exclusive thing because look at the backlash, it's insane. And then I heard some of the figures rumored that people got paid and thought, actually I shouldn't say in advance I wouldn't do that. Offer me that much money and let's see what my brain does. Because it's easy to have a principle before someone offers you a vast amount of money to break that principle, right?
Yeah.
But like in general, it would have to be enough money where I would be willing to just change my identity and never face any comments, never look at a reaction to any of my games ever again.
From Ubisoft.
Francis Tom. That's me. By now.
So the exclusive thing was not appealing to me, but, I wouldn't, rule out like having my games on their store at some point. If the store itself is good and the whole bullshit thing settles down. Like right now, it seems like being even associated with them is kind of toxic, but I imagine that will last forever. I mean, you remember like Steam was pretty bad at first. And
it's now.
It has still some problems. But in terms of like the actual like features it has and how usable it is, it's, come a long way. And then like stuff like Origin and Uplay and a lot of the other company and Games Winners Live, the Windows Store, all the other companies trying to enter the space sort of start, with high ambitions and then don't bother to, or just don't like, because their company structure often can't continue to invest in it and continue to make it better and better. So the test will be whether Epic actually do that and make their, fix all their shit.
Yeah.
I think I'm mostly just waiting to see how it meaningfully differentiates itself from other options apart from the exclusive side of things.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing.
I don't think it will.
But I mean, I guess if it becomes more of a, I don't like the word boutique for it because I think that doesn't really sum up the thing I mean. But if they have more of a human touch to it or more of a kind of, more identity to the selection or more personality there, that's something that I can see myself being at least interested enough to check out. And because I'm not being critical of them because I think, the other offerings out there are amazing. And I really think I'm definitely glad Steam has competition and can maybe jerk itself out of complacency, but I think I've said this on the podcast before. It's just, I don't see apart from the exclusives why I would go there.
Yeah.
That's why they do exclusives.
Anything else from GDC, Tom, that sort of jumped out?
Saw some talks about Subnautica and Slay the Spire and Dead Cells, all of which mentioned their early access, because all of them did like a year of early access and did very regular updates throughout. And that was kind of interesting from a sort of businessy standpoint. Dead Cells was really interesting. This is another one I'm writing up for RPS, about all the little helper mechanics it has behind the scenes to try and like guess what you were trying to do and fix what you actually pressed. So just stuff like, if you press attack when there's an enemy behind you and no enemy in front of you, you'll turn around and hit them.
Yeah, I think I feel you can tell that's happening.
Yeah.
By a certain amount, but yeah.
But they say that there's loads of this stuff going on that, apparently in all of early access, only 2 people ever mentioned that, like, as, to them. And they say that if you actually did intend to attack that enemy and what happens is the player attacks that enemy, you never consider that you did anything wrong. You just think, oh yeah, I pressed the right buttons. Even if, like, in other circumstances you'd be able to tell, actually, no, I didn't press left before I pressed attack.
Yeah, right. Huh. That's really interesting.
That's interesting because like when you have things like aim assist on and stuff, people get very sort of cranky about that, even though it means that the overall result is often better than they maybe were about to achieve. So that's interesting.
Well, I suppose it varies because like Destiny has extremely strong aim assist, but people don't complain about it. I think maybe tastes have evolved a little bit in that regard. But yeah, it's super interesting. If you do some video game news from the week, the thing I was going to mention was, so the game by The Outsiders, which was the studio co-founded by David Goldfarb, who did like Battlefield Bad Company 2 and Payday, I believe, some Starbreeze stuff. Which the game they had announced as Project White, was sort of revealed today, and it has a name now, and the name is Darkborn, which,
That's the opposite of Project White, maybe. It's like...
It was white as in spirit, as in WIGHT.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, like wicht.
I thought it was like, oh, we've really thrown them off the scent. Like, Project Sun, the game is called Moons.
You got me again, Pokemon.
Now it sounds like a From Software game.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Well, yes, it does. It sounds like two From Software games. But it's like neither. In fact, did either of you see the 15-minute video of it they put out today?
I saw something like a year ago, like some example gameplay.
So it's sort of I would describe it as, it's like a Grendel simulator, as in Beowulf, as in the monster from Beowulf, as in you're a vengeance-seeking kind of beastie, sort of like a big golem. Imagine, if you will, just one massive golem, fucking up some Vikings, essentially, which is the plot of Beowulf, the oldest work in the English language. And, but in terms of how it played, looking, from the sort of, they showed like 15 minutes of, I think, continuous play from the beginning of the game onwards. And it reminded me a bit of Hellblade, The Darkness, and the Shadow of Mordor games. And so it was an interesting one because and also the beginning of Alien vs Predator 2. So you and it not a game Pip should play, because it's very quick on impaling baby monsters almost straight away in a kind of way that's sad. So it starts with you as this little kind of, golemling kind of creature, sort of bat werewolf, spindly kind of monster boy girl, I don't know, creature thing. And your parents and younger sibling, this little baby, a quite cute baby one, will leave the nest because they can hear voices, and you sleep, and then you wake up and there's lots of screaming and blood and shouting, and you see the little baby one getting put on a spike, and it's all very kind of, it's all a bit much, for you. So you decide to rip people's throats out with your teeth. And then you sort of, so like mixture of sort of stealth and traversal, and first person stealth and traversal and things, but with a lot of like sort of takedowns, like very sort of visceral kind of, to use a banned word, first person dismemberings, which is what reminded me of the Darkness more than anything else. It's got a little bit of Far Cry to it, in that, that sort of snap to take down Far Cry thing, where it's like, yes, I'm stabbing you in the neck now. Let's both enjoy this. That, but with a lot of sort of talons in the neck. And then it's kind of interesting, it sort of transitions in obviously I don't know exactly what the flow of the game is from the video, but then it transitions into far more of an action game where you've suddenly gotten really big because you found your parents and ate a priest.
Wait, how did finding your parents make you big?
Well, you find your parents when you find
priest, I understand.
Yeah, when you find your dead kin, you like learn something from them. So you gain the ability.
I learned bigness.
Yeah. Well, you first learn the ability to shoot thorns at your hands.
Why didn't I think of that?
Exactly. You sort of, there's like a first person cutscene, you hold up the head of your sort of, tortured and battered and chained parent, and it goes sort of like, moop. And then you know how to fire thorns at your knuckles at Vikings now.
Oh, this reminds me.
I bequeath to you
my thorn
this.
Glands.
Exactly. And yeah, then so various weapons, like the ability to kind of like create a whip from your arm and things. And then there's a lot of sort of shredding Vikings in first person and ripping their hearts out and throwing them, and, darkness, very, very much felt darknessy to me. And then, but then a fight with a big Viking who has like a bunch of special characteristics, like immune to bite.
And bigness.
Yeah, he very big Viking. But yeah, like immune to bite. Doesn't like this or something like that, which is what reminds me of Shadow of Mordor. Yeah. One. And so I think what I came away from it was like, it's genuinely interesting, and it's a cool, like the Hellblade thing was part of the tone, like the sort of Norse, sort of wintry, I loved Hellblade very much, but I'd say that it was also a game set in a wintry shithole, in a very powerful, profound way, but nonetheless it's sort of like, you can do Norse settings in a sort of, not like, in a kind of, in a God of War way where everything's sort of larger than life, and you are sort of on par, you're sort of a big kind of ebullient expression of that setting, and you can do Norse myth where it's cold and crap and everyone's a bastard, which is the Hellblade / this sort of approach, particularly because the Vikings have come and put all the people you care about on spikes, which is bad. But yeah, and it sort of makes sense of it. Like it got a bit buzz today, and it's nice to see, because it's not a big developer. I think it's only 30 people working on it, which is, and given how good it looks, like it's a very, modern looking thing. Obviously really impressive production. I didn't get a tremendous sense though of how it all bolts together. You know, like, whether you can go back to doing stealth when you're massive. For example, like how that exactly works, and then what the actual kind of arc of it is. But yeah, thought that was worthy of mentioning because it got announced today. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's been a long time that.
And it's been developed for 2 years. I think they revealed it 2 years ago, which is also crazy because that means time is speeding up.
Which Beatles album did Best Be on the Wall?
The White Album?
Yeah.
Good. So the other thing from today that jumped out to me as newsworthy is Jason Schreier has done the thing he does well, which is find out why game go wrong. And which is not to diminish it because it's genuinely a really, really good piece. It's anonymously speaking to a lot of BioWare developers about Anthem and what happened, with touches as well on Andromeda and the sort of changing fate of that studios to encompass Edmonton, Montreal and Austin over the course of the last couple of years. And it's really interesting and quite hard to read in places because it's just a horrible kind of series of situations for developers to find themselves in. And obviously I say that with the caveat that obviously it appears very well sourced, but as ever with something like this, there's a lot of different sides to these kinds of stories, but it has a true ring to it, at least based on the state of the game.
I'm seeing the headline. I always have like an instinctive reaction to these things when it's like a game that had a poor reception. I always immediately think like, oh man, like all these people who worked on it for years, they just been through hell and then have a bad reaction as well. And then, do we really need more negative press about it? And then when you actually read it, it's very sympathetic to them and just sort of paints the team in a good light, basically. And speaks to the thing that I've seen over and over again in, especially with big companies where when something doesn't turn out well, or isn't received well, it's not because the team were lazy or stupid. It's because of and sometimes it's not even because like someone at the top was lazy and stupid. In this case, it sounds like there's just so many people like moving, like Casey Hudson just left and it sounds like not replaced, with, an equivalent kind of leader.
Yeah, or at least there wasn't necessarily an equivalent leader within the company. So you have to reassemble a kind of status quo. And
so it just sounds like chaos, basically, just being pulled in different directions for years and, every decision being up in the air and not resolved and, just an impossible, situation to work in and to produce something coherent under.
Yeah, the really striking things to me about it were that, so there's a few things that sort of gel with broader things that you become aware of, like, issues with frostbite, for example, being a persistent thing, across Dragon Age as well.
There's a quote in there that says frostbite has all the problems of an in-house engine where it's like weird and hacked together and not explained well and there's no good documentation, and also all the problems of an external engine because no one you work with has worked on it or knows anything about it.
Right. Yeah. And then, but also like the extent to which, and this is the thing that surprised me because it sounds like, Anthem's in development for 6.5 years, I think. And then one of the things that really struck me about that piece is the claim that the game was essentially made in the last 9 months. That like, obviously there was a tremendous amount of art and development and writing and things, but the amount of sort of usable game that was actually produced, most of it was done very, very, very late in the day. And that you can feel that, I think, in the game that they released, but there's still something kind of very sort of almost shocking to have it confirmed, given, it's, until I hadn't actually seen the E3 demo from a couple of years ago. again, since they did it on stage at EA, right? I hadn't rewatched it or anything, and it's, linked in that article, and I rewatched it, and it's striking. It's striking the game that it describes not being the one that exists. And yeah, it's just a real shame. The other thing that, stood out to me from it, and obviously this is a page in my own book of grudges, but apparently one of the sort of diktats that was given, particularly for the storytelling component of the game was, there can be no, memeable problems with it, which is a direct reference to the fact that Andromeda had so many problems with like GIFs of its animations and things. And as a consequence, they invested a lot in very expensive performance capture, which meant that once written, none of the lines written for the game could be changed. So there's loads of cutscenes that don't make any sense, that refer to events that don't happen, that people say, I don't know where this character is, but they're standing next to them. And it's because things changed in the design of missions, for example, or in just in the game as they do. But, ironically, that investment in, not having a face go all weird meant that they then created a memeable problem, because people would then share those clips of these ridiculous cutscenes where someone says in a very well animated way, I don't know where this person is, while standing next to them. And so it's sort of, I guess the answer there is priorities, really, but it is harder to make a meme of that. Like, you got to have some context and explain the guy in the background is the guy they're talking about. Right. Yeah. Hilarious. Yeah. But yeah.
Another quote that was really interesting, was, that someone, or maybe several people, described the way that Mass Effect's development was run was, Casey Hudson and his team were like, Picard and the Enterprise, and the singular mission, and everyone did what the captain said. And Dragon Age's team was like a pirate ship, like meandering from port to port.
I quite like that.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, the Enterprise analogy doesn't completely hold, because did the Mass Effect team spend a lot of time fucking around in the holodeck? Like, were they all Robin Hood for a week?
And actually, the Enterprise is not that focused. It kind of does meander around.
Yeah. It's, it makes sense the first time you hear it. Maybe that's really accurate.
Surely Voyager was more focused.
Yeah, that's true.
Voyager had an actual, we want to go over there.
It's interesting, it sounds like it's a miracle that Dragon Age Inquisition is so good. Cause it seems like it has, it was the first one to use Frostbite, and Frostbite is cited as one of the reasons that, Andromeda was difficult to make, and that, the Anthem was difficult to make. And yet, Inquisition somehow got over it all. It sounds like the development was hell. And there's a quote in there again, saying that Dragon Age Inquisition doing well was one of the worst things that could happen to BioWare, because a lot of the people who worked on it were hoping let's hope it bombs and it'll prove that this way of making games doesn't work, because it was so brutal to go through. Unfortunately, it did well.
Yeah, right. And it's
maybe now they'll say this way of games is finally not working.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the conclusions that the article as a whole draws, is that, 2 big failures in a row, is a huge danger sign. My fear for BioWare, this isn't covered in the article, my fear for them is that EA is not necessarily an ecosystem that takes those kinds of failures as, okay, well, time to reassess how we use this pool of talent. It's, you just sort of cease to be, or you get folded into something else, which would be a huge shame. It does feel like, as well, like a lesson in just sort of the impossibility of fully changing the identity of a studio to perform a different task. Like, there's a description that, I don't know if it was Andromeda or Anthem, but one of them lost a lot of their engine tech people to FIFA. Because FIFA needed help and FIFA makes all the money. So, a single player RPG or a multiplayer RPG is never going to make as much money as FIFA does, on a quiet day. So, from a business point of view, it's a complete no-brainer to reassign those people, but it leaves then these big games like Anthem or Andromeda without the people that actually make the engine, because FIFA time just, it's a really good, read, but also, profoundly sad if you were sort of, as I do, love a particular era of games by that studio.
Yeah. I can't help thinking they would have been better off just sort of swallowing the cost of using Unreal. Like, they had a sort of company-wide mandate to, let's all get on the same technology so we can share, information and accumulated knowledge and everything, which I think makes a lot of sense. But making it your own engine, saves you on royalty or whatever.
Licensing fees and things, yeah.
But it sounds like Frostbite was not up to it, and it's had such a huge cost. Surely it would have been worth just paying what it costs
Well,
to use Unreal.
the thing that surprised me is that like the Dragon Age team had to program the ability to save and load the game into the engine, which I find that surprising. But
it actually sounds like they kind of had to sort of convert in both directions, because obviously Dragon Age Inquisition was making a single player game from an engine that was built for multiplayer, so it doesn't have save and load. And then Anthem couldn't use Dragon Age Inquisition's a lot of their tech because it was built for a single player game where you don't have to worry about cheating, you don't have to worry about all kinds of security issues, and so they rebuilt a lot of that stuff. And so just the worst possible. The
other thing that came out now, and again, this is sort of hanging off all the caveats of according to anonymous sources, but was that because at the Game Awards, I think they basically announced Dragon Age 4, like in all but name. They did a very kind of coy teaser for Dreadwolf Rises, which would be the next Dragon Age game, which makes sense based on the events of the last DLC for Inquisition. But I didn't realize that they had reportedly canned Dragon Age 4 and then rebooted it. So, they apparently, that game was canned. That team was moved into basically get Anthem over the line and then started again, but having lost a lot of its people, which, and now, using entirely Anthem's tech. And I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
So are they now having to like reverse engineer Anthem's
take it back to
inventory? Yeah.
Oh, God. I'm not even working on it. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Just a strange situation, particularly because, and I think this is raised in the article, it's something I felt that, the time, like, BioWare Austin were involved in this. BioWare Austin developed and continue to run a multiplayer story-driven online RPG, and it's remarkable how few of the lessons of Star Wars: The Old Republic were incorporated into Anthem in any way, including how to tell a story in a multiplayer context, or how to deliver cutscenes when people are in co-op and maybe playing with their friends and need to be able to revisit things, like, or any of that stuff. And that comes across in the article that there wasn't the Edmonton were the ideas studio and Austin were the execution studio, whether they liked it or not. Which is, it's one of those sort of gut punch kind of like, oh no, and hindsight is 2020. So you assume when you're giving quotes or something like this, you have your best horror stories ready. So that's the pinch of salt, but still, it's really good. Put a link in the show notes, obviously, because it's,
Poor devs.
Yeah. What have you been playing, Pip?
I've been looking after a little shop. In a game called, I think it's Ving Culture, which just means shop in Dutch.
Okay.
But it's one of those little shop sim things where you start off with the shop that you have inherited from some relative somewhere. That screen went by quite quickly, don't remember. And you have the basic space. You put in a few tables, you can put your stock of items on that and put a little counter in and then open up for business, and people will just come in and buy the things that they are looking for. So far, I have only played for a few hours, but I've already started to expand the store. I've got a little outdoor area with planters so that I can grow some of my own potatoes and artichokes and things like that, so that I can have a supply of those that I don't need to pay for. I have storage pallets so that I can keep backup stock and replenish my shelves and things. So it's, and every day you can buy more things at night time, or you can see whether the travelling merchants that come up to the counter have anything that you want to buy.
What kind of things do you sell in the shop? Is it vegetables?
So it's interesting in that I'm wondering if, cause it's an early access game, it was only about £7, I think. And so far I haven't been able to specialise at all. As in, I've tried, because I have a little tailoring station and I can convert linen into trousers and shoes and tunics and things. And I can level up my ability by doing more of that and therefore create better quality stuff that people pay more for. But even when I populated the whole shop with just clothes. People would come in and they would have like a little, but where are the potatoes? like thought bubble over their head.
I'm thinking that in Topshop all the time.
And so it was, okay, that's not going to fly. And so I've had to try and keep a balance of stuff hanging around. So that's been... I think I don't know how I feel about that, because on the one hand you can start telling stories about the man who came in for 2 pairs of trousers and a sack of potatoes, but on the other hand it kind of means that the whole shop still feels a bit all over the place to me, and I feel like I'm getting better at things gradually, but it doesn't feel like I'm able to excel in anything at the moment, because I can't focus on it for long enough to really boost it. I think maybe that will improve as they add more bits to the shop, so you can get different types of floor tiles, you can get different entrance ways to match the decor, you can up the appeal of your shop so that more people come visit it, but obviously there's a trade-off there with how many people turn up versus how much stock you can keep on hand, that kind of thing. And there's also little environmental stuff. So there's a seasonal progression, which I think can affect... I don't know if it can affect what grows, because I've only been through spring and summer at the moment, so I don't know whether the planters that I've got outside will need to come back in or something, or whether I'll stop being able to grow things. And there's also other weird things, like I got a little notification on the top bar that I checked, and it said that there had been a forest fire, so the price of wood had gone up, so it was more expensive for me to buy, but it meant that because I actually had bought quite a bit of wood just before that happened, I could sell it for more. So sometimes you just end up with, a lot of cash at the end of a day, and that's quite nice. But I think I'm not... Either the game feedback loop isn't quite there yet on that front, or I'm not looking at the right information on the screen yet, but I can't often predict what's going to sell well. And I think... I'm trying to work out the ways that people buy things, because it seems like if they turn up at your shop and the thing that they're looking for is on the shelf already, they'll buy that and then maybe buy 1 or 2 extra things as well. So it's good that that stuff was already there. But if the thing that they wanted isn't there, they'll stand there with the picture of it in their thought bubble above their head until you put it out. But then they'll only buy that one thing. So I guess, that's about, keep a variety of stuff on your shelves and things. But
do they ever leave, or is it just sort of thinking about potato forever?
So they have a timer until they get sad. So you've got a little window of opportunity in which to provide whatever it is that they're after. But if you can't, like, for example, if the merchant has already been and gone for the day, or if they don't happen to have the thing that you're lacking that the person wants, or if there's not enough time to craft it at one of your crafting stations, then they just get really sad and leave. I don't know if...
Can you tell them, today we have no potato?
See, this is the stuff. I think it's still really early access. I think. I'm not sure ultimately, like, how far through that process it's gone. I'm just trying to temper people's expectations, because I'm obviously really enjoying it. You have to kind of pry me away from it to come and do this podcast. It was like, I've got clogs to craft. What are you talking about? And it seems quite good at you. So you earn experience, and I've been, I guess, leveling up various things in my shop. So I've also been unlocking new items to make it pretty, new things to hang on the wall, different types of shelving, different storage options, that kind of stuff. So that's been cool. I get sucked into those loops so easily. But like at the end of the day, if somebody's looking for, I don't know, asparagus and you don't have any, you just have to awkwardly stand there waiting out their sadness timer until they leave. okay. Like, you can't even just usher them out of the shop and go, please stop now.
Roughly how much longer do you have on your asparagus wanting?
Like, how long are you going to keep this up, friend? But yeah, so it's, I've found it nice and relaxing, but I think it's one of those ones where I think it still has a bit of a journey to go through in terms of refining those things, or, you know, or maybe I just would like things that they're not as interested in, like that specialism type stuff. I like the idea that maybe I could, because in The Sims, I just sometimes focus in on growing plants and things and harvesting crops, because that's my economy. It's like, I don't need a job. I've got brilliant potatoes. Like, what are you worried about? You know? Yeah. I've got these apples. Like, you
How about these apples?
Exactly. And if you get your farm going, it's brilliant. So I think I'd like that. And I haven't seen a way to automatically restock shelves and things yet, so there's a lot of clicking on things, and that has really affected how I lay out my shop, because essentially I don't want anything that isn't on one wall. So it's everything over to the left of the shop is where, you know, you can stack things, because otherwise it's inefficient clicking.
And if you're sad about potatoes, you can stand on the right.
But it's really cute and really charming, and actually very manageable in a way that I find a lot of games aren't sometimes now.
I feel like if you sold magazines, then it would be better to not have what they want, because while they're sitting there pining for their asparagus, they might want something to read, and then they buy the magazine, and then you bring in the asparagus. Like, you had it all along. You just... Are you saying that I should hold vegetables hostage to sell magazines?
This is how we save print media.
Yeah, I was going to say...
Asparagus crime.
I know it's been a while since you worked in print media.
Is that not the kind of ploy that they're pulling these days?
I mean, maybe
in my day, it was all asparagus with holdall.
Maybe if I put asparagus on the front of the magazine, like as a free gift or something, then that would help me. Or like, buy one, get something else.
What if it was a magazine about a vegetable you did have? So you're sad about no asparagus, but you need something to read, so you pick up Broccoli Monthly or something. But they do have broccoli, then you buy broccoli, then you're happy. At which point you bring the asparagus out, they've bought both. Quids in.
Maybe.
We'll eat this Christmas.
Or
both
maybe
both of you.
Maybe you get people outside the store just sort of having really loud chats about how great the things you do have in stock are, and how lame asparagus actually is.
YouTubers.
They get 25%.
Yeah, exactly. I need them to funnel things to my Epic store. That would be great.
So what you need is exclusives, really.
We missed a really good segue here, wasn't it? And Pip, you've got your own Epic store.
We did, we had to talk about goblins and things going wrong.
I mean, I've bought a small rug that's boosted the attractiveness of my shop right up there. So
to stare at while you're looking at your feet. Sad about potatoes.
I've got a vase of tulips, also good. I'm considering a picture of a cat, I think. It's going to be good. It's going to be great.
Typical shop.
Yeah, I mean, there's nowhere for my shopkeeper to sleep or eat or sit. But you know.
Wait, so what do you see when the shop closes? Do they just
stand there in terms of you
thinking about shop.
Only shop was open.
You can only rearrange furniture that they're standing near, so you have to sort of make them walk around so that you can reposition the furniture. If
I like that they are not you in this conception of it.
Well, it's because you have to manage an avatar to make the interface work, and so it isn't you as a godlike being. It's you as a godlike being forcing a puppet to do your bidding and be near the things you want to affect. Look, it's very complicated. You have never run a shop before, so you can't tell me what this is.
That's true.
I used to work in retail. This is exactly
it was
what
just
it's
like
that. Someone would assign me to the help desk. I would stand there and I would help people.
You must stand next to something in order to move it. That is true.
Yeah, exactly.
But to be clear, the avatar doesn't actually move the furniture. They just stand near it while
No,
it moves.
they stand near it and they move it.
So they're kind of a telekinetic.
Ish. Yeah, it's like they've got a really localized telekinesis going on. They're probably a poltergeist is what I'm getting.
Or you're
I mean, it's longer range than my telekinesis.
You're a poltergeist and they are haunted.
Yeah, that's probably better about this. But yeah, so that's my life.
What's it called again?
Right now. Ving Culture, I believe. That pronunciation might well be up for debate. Dunno.
Is it on
Sounds
Steam?
like a job for show notes.
It is on Steam.
Cool.
It is. And it is in early access, and I believe it is about £7 at the moment.
I seem to recall a friend of the podcast, Mike Cook, has recommended this as well. And
That
he's very...
was the exact person whose tweets reminded me to try it out and to pick it up. And I did exactly those two things.
He's got some cheese on a pedestal in his shop. He's very happy about his cheese.
I've only just unlocked the ability to get cheese, so I keep putting it on high shelves, but not in a pedestal kind of way, just in a kind of, it's pleasing to me on those shelves. And then I've got like a whole, like, cupboard of trousers. And then my tunics are now of such a quality that they sparkle blue. So, because you can see the kind of the rarity of things, because normal stuff is just like white sparkles.
So does sufficiently good cheese sparkle blue?
I don't know, because I don't know if it's a thing that you can then make, because you only unlock things gradually, and so all I've got are the planters and the tailoring station. So I don't know if you can unlock things like so you can sell bread, but I don't know whether you get maybe a bread oven or something at some point, and that would be cool. Or like if what was the other stuff, like, you know, for cheese, maybe you could get like a cheese making kit. Some kind of, what's the thing, the grinder?
Cow.
The cheese grinder.
Yeah, well, no, you know the thing, the,
Churn?
yeah, like, oh, that's butter, I suppose, but then you use the, I don't know, how do you leave it to ferment, don't you?
You
It's
put thingy in
fermenting.
it. It's, you know, you need to add that ingredient. The name's completely escaped me.
Mold.
That comes from a lamb's stomach, I believe.
Rennet.
That's the one.
Rennet.
Rennet.
Rennet sounds right.
Yeah, it does sound right. Yeah, you put that in it.
But that can't be it.
Well, no, then you have to kind of store it and, you know, age it, I guess. I don't know.
Google
I'm not
it.
a cheese smith.
You Google this.
I don't want to.
Oh. Well, you can't be putting out misinformation. We don't know anything about cheese.
No one coming here was looking for cheese
Yeah, but
facts.
then we all tried to give cheese facts. We don't have any cheese facts. Anyway.
We are standing sadly thinking of cheese facts, waiting for the cheese facts to appear.
No, we've got
Reading a
nothing.
magazine.
Yeah, exactly.
Subscribe to your local cheesemaker magazine. Anyway, I'm done. I've got nothing.
Tom, I would be interested to know, because I know there's a game we've both been playing, but I'd be interested to know what you have made of Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice so far.
Yeah.
We spoke about it extensively on the last pod.
Yeah,
but
I'll be quick.
you've got a really good perspective on this because it's not the sort of game I would associate you with, so.
I wouldn't call it good, but my perspective, I mean. Yeah, I bounced off Dark Souls, and that's the only other FromSoft game I've even tried. And I bounced off Dark Souls because I don't like boss fights or repeating myself. And that's a game comprised of those two things. But I've got on much better with Sekiro. I played about 5 hours of it. And I think that's because it has a much better, I have a much better sense of whether I did a fight right or not. Like when you do a fight right in Sekiro, you know, you're parrying, well, for me, you're not parrying everything, but you're blocking everything at least and parrying some of that stuff. And then you do a really cool dramatic finishing move and it kills them. Whereas in Dark Souls, even when I was getting through the fights, I was like, I don't know if I really did that right, or if, like, you know, is losing a couple of hit points to that kind of enemy a good performance or a bad one, or, it always felt kind of messy even when I was getting through it. And then also when you do die to, like, boss fights are still, big dudes who have certain attack thingies that you've got to learn. I was going to say patterns, but I don't think it's that rigid necessarily, but it's more like, you know, you get to know the boss. You get to know what they might do and when you need to press parry to deal with it, and what else you need to do to deal with their attacks, and, you know, whether you should run in and put pressure on them, or whether you should hold back and see what they do and that kind of stuff. So it's about learning those bosses. And in Dark Souls, that was a pain in the ass for me because every time I died, I had to trudge through all this combat to get back to them. And you still are reset to, one time you die, you can resurrect on the spot, but then you get, you go back to a campfire or equivalent shrine. But because this is kind of a stealth game and has a grappling hook, two things I like, getting back to where you were is way quicker. Cause you can just grapple past everybody. You just don't need to, even if you didn't have grapple hook, you could probably sneak past a lot of them. But yeah, it's quick to get back to where you were. It's still, I am now at the point, I played about 5 hours, and the other weird thing is I haven't found it that difficult. Like I haven't been breezing through it, but like I haven't had any boss that's been, like something I bash my head against for, 20 minutes or anything.
Yeah.
It's always been like
20 minutes. I wish.
I haven't fought any of the really tough ones. I don't think I haven't done the Chained Ogre.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So yeah.
I've encountered him, but I've just skipped him because I heard that you needed the flame thing, and I've got that now. But the branch on which you get the flame thing is really, really long, so I'm still going down that.
Right. Yeah.
The speary guy, where it's good if you've learned the thrust counter ability.
Yes, I know what you mean.
I fought him. He was not difficult for me.
It's pretty good going.
And now I'm on a drunk guy.
Yeah.
And he certainly kicked my ass the first time I fought him. I haven't tried again since. But it's starting to get to the point where I'm losing patience, because although I can get back to where I was, a lot of the bosses are surrounded by minions, and I personally want to take all those guys out in stealth. And I can do it eventually, but it does take a long time. And so for every try at the boss, I've got to do that all over again, basically.
Yeah, right. That drunk guy's an interesting example, actually. I think of one of the first fights where you actually have quite a lot. There's some things in the environment, but there's also different routes and things. You have a little bit of choice of how you set up the fight. Like, it's almost inevitable that you're going to have a fight with the boss and whoever you haven't managed to stealth to death. But it's actually, a good example of why the stealth system is cool, I think, because it allows you to sort of pick which enemy you find the least, or, the one you want to deal with the least, and then sort of plot your course through the minions, and then start working on the big man who spits poisonous booze at you.
Yeah. But that's when I discover, I didn't know he was going to do that, and now I'm dead. I've got to do all that again.
Yeah.
Like, you can, in theory, because you can resurrect, I've usually only got one resurrect ready, and that means that I can get up and I could try him again, but if I die then, I've lost, and then you lose some permanent, or, it has the block thing spreads, and there's a bigger punishment for that, so I go back to the base and I rest and, then come back. I have, like, outside of the bosses, I've been pleased to find sometimes, like, I'll come against like a load of ranged enemies and think, oh god, I'm really going to have to shuriken all these people or something like that. And then realize, oh no, if I go down here and then take this alternate path, I can come around the side of the cliff and come up behind them and then, stealth kill them all, which is what I like to do.
Yeah.
So like alternate routes to take down a group of enemies is a cool thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it, because it's great. I'm on the last boss now, and I hate it now.
How long has that taken you?
I think I'm on the last boss, so that's a caveat. I think I am. It very much feels like the last boss. But that is 35 hours, which I think is decent going. But yeah, it's definitely, and that's, I think I made quite a lot of progress since we spoke about it last week on the pod. And it's great. It's definitely huge. I still very, very, very much love it, although I think it gets hard. Like, there's a point, that's a fair way ahead of where you're up to, where, there are bosses that it considers the actual bosses that you get that'll give you like a special thing that, permanently upgrades you, which is good. And it's not the other thing that permanently, it's a sort of a specific to each boss. And it's when you encounter the first one of them, and I was maybe 10, 15 hours into the game at that point, and you go, oh, that was a boss. Oh, that's the one you think is a boss. Everything else is a mini-boss. Oh, shit.
Yeah, I don't think I've fought a real boss yet.
You haven't. Which is great, because it's sort of, it continually surprised me with how much rad stuff there is in it, and like really amazing environments and creature designs and just really spectacular kind of moments. And there's so much to it. And I've now got I think there's I won't bang on about Sekiro any more than I have on the previous pod, but like, there's something like the reverse big town problem that
small town.
Yeah. That From Soft games create, where you're sort of, you tunnel on this thread. Like, the thing they're amazing at, I think, is like, if you play either a big RPG or a Ubisoft game or something like that, you're constantly achieving stuff. You go to a place, you do the thing, you climb the tower, you get the thing, you get the points, you get the crafting thing, you go there, you do a side quest. You're constantly achieving like a very small amount. And whereas in a From Software game, sometimes you just like beat a fight you found tough and unlocked the next bonfire or the shrine or whatever, and you feel like, wow, I just made a whole bunch of progress. And then the thing they don't tell you is that over the course of that playthrough, you're making loads and loads of decisions, and you're choosing loads of different things about your route and which NPCs you talk to and what you say and how you talk to them that change the ending. And so you get to the end and you realize, oh, this is a culmination of a series of decisions I didn't know I was making. And it's never paralyzed me with that decision. And now I'm paralyzed by the scope of everything I've done and how far I've come and how irrecoverable my state is, which is not something games often thrust you into, right? Like, games will often leave it right to the end to say, like, which ending do you want? The Deus Ex thing of like, you've done it. Which one do you like? Do you want this one? Sure. Whereas this is very much like, this is, it's got a lot more integrity for that reason. But the reason I call it the reverse of the big town problem is it's almost like, at no point did you make me aware of the span of possibility. So I just did things. And now I'm ruining it or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's great, but also hard and makes you sad. And then sometimes, and then some swordsmen are dicks is the thing. And you don't want to have to, sometimes you just got to fight some ninjas or a big samurai or something, and it takes fucking forever. And that's Sekiro. I definitely have settled into the rhythm of like, I will try this boss 3 times, then I'm going to switch it off and do something else. Yeah. Cause that's like the only way to keep sanity well.
That's about my limit as well.
Yeah.
I think I really like that there's a practice guy and you can practice fighting against him, and that made me realize, oh shit, I think I could get good at this game if I could restart every boss fight just infinitely with just quick save, because like practicing parrying against him, if I can just do it over and over again, I just get it down and I'm just like, I can just parry that guy forever. I'll even like push myself to like try, do something irrelevant halfway through his strike and then see if you can still parry, and change course and stuff. And I got better at that. But when it's like, if I have to trek back to the boss and then fight a bunch of other stuff on the way, that distracts me and I lose the thread of what I was learning about that boss.
So the thing I would say that's really good about it is when it gets hard, it doesn't ask you to do a run back at all. Oh. Like the shrine is next to the boss. Oh, like, cool. For the really hard ones, like it expects you to get to the point where, like for the mini bosses, which are the guys who have like maybe two death blow points and you fight, it kind of expects you to have gotten to the point where you're familiar with basically everything these people can do. So it'll make them like skippable, but you may have a bit of a run back if you decide to kind of grind away trying to beat them, but they're skippable. So it's, it's your choice. But for the really tough bosses, the run back is no enemies 10 seconds through a door, like, and you're back kind of thing, which is good because it makes it far less grueling in some ways. In some ways, almost more, because you don't get any break from the kind of relentless learn, but that can be satisfying in its own way. So yeah. When we were talking about, Sekiro, last week, I said I would be amazed if, a better game was released this year because I was so impressed with it and really, really have loved it. And then, Totally Accurate Battle Simulator just came out of nowhere.
Very much in the same vein.
Yeah. Meticulous, razor sharp simulation of combat between expert, very deadly combatants, set against the somber backdrop of historical war. I've been
following GIFs of this for years and getting increasingly excited about it because it's a slapstick battle simulator where there are different sets of units from different eras. They're all very physics driven. You've talked before about their battle royale game.
Yeah,
right?
Totally Accurate Battlegrounds. Yeah.
Yep. It's all physics driven, everyone looks ridiculous, and it takes a sort of defiantly inaccurate view of history where like Viking longboats are just, because it's all land-based, the Vikings are just holding up the longboat. There's just like one person at the front, one person at the back just carrying it. And there's just, the way it's combat effective is that they run towards the enemy and just kind of throw it at them. And then it lands and like breaks to pieces. But then the people inside who have oars just hit everyone with the oars. And it's surprisingly effective.
Yeah, it's a bit like if so the actual involvement in it is not actually like, it's not like an RTS or anything. You know, if you're playing a challenge, you get to see one half of the battlefield, and you have a certain points value that you spend on building an army on the other half. And then you press go, and the two armies run at each other, and then physics happens, basically. Yep. And, it's brilliant. I realized knowing I was going to be talking about it tonight, it's a struggle to articulate why it's so great. Cause it's like, it is very physicsy in that two identical scenarios can go completely differently. Cause like, if someone like gets caught on someone else's spear, like under their arm, then they can get carried around on top of the spear, like not dead, just kind of they're stuck up there and no one else knows what to do about it. Cause the AI is ultimately really rudimentary. Like enemies will run at each other and then fire or swing their swords or do whatever at the whatever speed interval is they are set to do. And that is it.
I had, the king, who's the medieval era's star unit, who's just like a really tall man with a sword and a crown, who's super tough.
And he sort of goes like, like, everything he sounds like the last line of a speech.
I had him just versus like 20 shield guys just to see what that was like. And I can't remember what era the shield guys were from, but, the first one he killed, he sort of like scooped him up on his sword in such a way that the shield, all of these shields have a little hole in the top left corner, and that hole went over the tip of his sword, and so it slotted down and just dangled from his sword, and actually protected him from most of the hits of the other shield guys. They're just like this pure quirk of the physics system that the shield was stuck to him and stayed on for the rest of the battle, and he won easily.
And it's funny because like winning and losing can feel obviously super arbitrary because it's such nonsense, and it's all on the charm of it, and it's almost defiantly unwilling to be refined. It's like if you had to draw like what is the opposite of Into the Breach, and it's this. Like it is completely uninterested in like, you know, sort of razor sharp tactical refinement, while also like offering sort of structured challenges in some ways, but often they're sort of trivially easy, and yet somehow that's amazing just because of the situations that like emerge based on your choice of units and how things happen to interact. And at the same time, there is a sort of logic to, you can look at it, you know, I think the thing for me is because there's, you know, there's a sandbox where you can do whatever, but there's also like, you know, there are missions and there's loads of them actually. And some of them are really, really easy. Like it's often just like, here's some stuff, or like the mission itself is kind of a gag. Like,
the only one I found, especially difficult was the one where it's like a city with two channels down it and there's two groups of enemies.
Yeah, right. I think that's, cause there are 3 sets of missions, right? And like 3 sets of 50, I think. Maybe that's wrong, but yeah.
That one, it's, the only thing I figured out was you have access to catapults, and you can only afford one catapult, but a single catapult boulder can wipe out one of those groups of enemies, but a catapult is very slow to fire, and if anything just touches it, it falls apart.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out a way of doing that. Like after you build one catapult, you have, I don't know, like a very small budget left for anything else. You can only build like 1 or 2 other units, and very basic ones. And, at first I built just like a few basic defenders because I thought, well, it's going to take out one group really quickly, and then while the other group comes towards it, as long as these defenders can, you know, hold them off for a little while, it can get a second boulder ready and then kill them. What actually happened is because you can't control your units in any way, the 2 soldier guys I'd spawned just ran straight to the enemy immediately and got themselves killed before even the first boulder was fired. And so then I tried placing bards as the backup, and bards have different AI because I don't even know what they do at all. I assume they support your troops in some way.
No.
Okay, they do
bards
nothing.
Are the best thing in the game.
They run away from enemies. That's their AI. And that worked way better because the bards would immediately, they actually, I tell a lie, they run towards the enemy until they are actually close to them, and then they run away from them. And so they ran up to the first enemy group and then just ran away from them in a different direction to the catapult. And so all the enemies just chased these bards for ages while the catapult.
That is what bards are for.
Shots.
Yeah. Right. Like it's interesting. So that first set of missions unlocks all of the units as you go through it. And then the second and third batches of missions, you just get given a points value and you have access to every unit that you can afford. So across eras, you can pick whatever you like. And that's, I think they're called like Adventure and Challenge is the second two.
Oh, right. So I played one set of missions and then I noticed in the options menu I could choose to unlock all the things, but I didn't know there was other sets of missions.
Yeah. So if you click I can't remember what the button is. It's like, the missions rather than sandbox. Then there are 3 categories.
Oh, right.
And the second 2, it's just a points value. And usually the points value you have is slightly less than the points value of the opposing army. And that's where the challenge comes from. It's like, beat it more efficiently. And there's a really, the thing I really kind of love about it, is sometimes, like, I've just figured out certain things that almost always work regardless of the situation. And one of them is a tactic I started thinking of as the Barden switch, which is almost anything in the game, because there are things like leaping Vikings that will leap at a target, archers or potion throwers that will throw potions at a particular point. Often the way you win, you might have 10,000 points to spend, which is loads in this. And often the way you win is by placing a single bard pretty close to the enemy by himself. And then a huge semicircle of archers, like 50 archers, as many archers as you can afford. And this is apparently broken warfare. Like, this wins almost all forms of historical battle. Because what happens is, if the enemy doesn't have any kind of leaping or shooting units, they run at the bard, and the bard runs away. And the bard will die. But at some point, they will lose so many people to this barrage of arrows that it'll then become unsustainable. Alternative, they do have like leaping units. They'll all leap on the one bard, and in trying to leap to a single point, you end up with this giant pile of men, all sort of like clambering over each other and getting stuck on each other's swords and shields and like falling over and all this stuff, while just a gun line of archers just fires into and I'm pretty sure this is how like medieval British, like the English longbow worked. I think you just sent one person out in front yelling and playing a lute, and then everyone else fired a longbow at people, but it works extremely well. But then you get all these mad little situations, and I think the heart of it is, it's like, cause it's not, and actually part of me is really glad that it's not especially difficult. Like, you get there are priests, for example, and the priests fire like a healing / invulnerability laser out of their holy grail on a stick. And, so an early paradigm you get given is just like surrounding the king with priests, and they go like, bzzzt, and you've got to find ways to make sure they don't die, or hope they don't die. But like, there's a lot of, ways to sort of try and arrange that. And you can get this, a wonderful situation earlier where a good counter to priests and, loads of knights or something like that is catapults, because the boulder keeps rolling, so it might roll to the back line and kill some priests, but also, the priest kind of laser has like a refresh rate, like it goes like zzz and then zzz again. And often the sustained damage of being like knocked back, because they still get knocked around, will mean that they still take loads of damage in the time when they're not being protected. So that first sort of like cannonball kind of, catapult barrage wipes out that initial wave. And I got a brilliant situation. I really wish I'd clipped it or something, or had Shadowplay running, because it just ended up in a situation where, a ballista was extremely slowly reloading, but the only 2 enemy things left were 2 priests, and 2 priests left to their own devices will just heal each other. So they stood and they looked like they were just almost having a conversation, just going at each other right in front of this ballista as it really like slowly rotated back into position, and the thing comes back. And there's this great little sort of like snare drum kind of like as soon as you win, and it freeze frames on that moment. So it's just a single ballista bolt like picking 2 priests up off the air, and they're kind of floating through the air, ragdolling. It's so good. It's so kind of relentlessly kind of charming with how everything kind of plays out. It's really good.
My favorite unit is the wheelbarrow, which is, I love how one of the eras is just farming. It's just the farm era.
It's cavemen farming, knights, Greeks, Vikings, and that's it so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of the
and it looks like there's going to be, like, there's pirates. A shuriken symbol, there's a gun symbol, and something else. I think it's pirates, ninjas, and zombies. The wheelbarrow is, one guy with very big curly hair steering the wheelbarrow, and another guy with a pitchfork just sitting on the wheelbarrow, and they're incredibly fast, and they have like some sort of driving AI, or like it's remarkable how well it works, in that they're pretty effective at smashing into the enemy. They do a crazy amount of damage, and then if they miss, they'll try and swerve around, and they have a fairly wide turning circle. But because they're so fast and so reckless, and they end up, taking damage. When they take damage, they kind of fall apart, but like the guy with the pitchfork gets up, and the guy steering it, if he's still alive, can also fight. And so they end up, like, they can mop up the survivors or whatever chaos they cause. But it just creates like the most amazing chaos. Like the last one I did, I was just messing around in sandbox mode, and I tried like because there are these single powerful units from every era. So I tried like one of each of those versus just a big mixed army that's, and just tweak that until it was roughly even, until they've sort of won and lost half the time. And, the chaos, it involves a lot of berserkers, who are the ones who jump, and like the first 2 seconds of that match are just like everything flying at the All-Stars team, as I'm calling it. And then just the wheelbarrows slam into that, and then any scene you look at just has wheelbarrows like veering around, smashing into walls, like just sailing through the air. I don't know how they got into the air, but they're in the air now. And I watched one of those land in slow motion, and like whilst everything else is going on behind it, you know, the front wheel slams into the ground, and then the guy on the front like breaks his neck up, and the other one's like gets impaled on the wheelbarrow itself.
Man, there's a really good series of missions. I think it's in the second set, which is, they're all called Final Destination something. And there's like, it's the Greek map. It's the one with the 2 streets that you were describing. In the middle, between those 2 streets, there's like a really thin wall. It's like a little spa. It's about a person wide. And each of those missions is the same. It's just one of a particular unit. And then you have not many points, like 100 points to spend on something facing them. And the cheat code for a lot of this is the headbutter, which is the default Viking infantry unit, who is a lady who just flings herself head first at people, like a Muppet. Like just sort of, and she's so quick to attack that she sort of gets a march on almost any other even bigger form of infantry, because she just flings herself head first. But then you get in the really amazing ones later on where you have a wheelbarrow mounted on this really thin spar of wall, and then you've got to figure out what you can place that doesn't cost very much that will defeat it straight away. And then eventually like a mammoth. And I had a game that I had to actually unfortunately restart because the king one, he managed, no, it was the berserk, it was like the Norse chieftain, the bear guy with like the bear skin over his head. Just sort of, the Jarl. Fell so that he was sort of legs akimbo either side of the wall and just lay there screaming for like indefinitely, but failing to die while a bunch of archers failed to shoot him from below. It was really, really good. It's really like, it only costs like 11 quid. It's an early access, and I'm sure they'll add to it and things. It's been unstable for me. It crashes a lot, which,
really?
Yeah, like, but from mission to mission, it always saves progress and things, but it just means reloading it. But yeah, it's great.
I had a lovely moment at the end of, one of the battles I staged, and I put either a GIF or a YouTube video of this, on Twitter. But a lot of snake archers were shooting at a lot of, wheelbarrows. Oh no, sorry, Viking longboats. And it mostly resolved, and there was just like one snake archer left and one guy from a Viking longboat, like,
oh, I saw this.
The people on the longboats have oars and they're pretty effective, but there's also the people carrying the longboats just don't have anything. And so he walks up to the snake archer. The snake archer has a very, very slow refire rate. And so there's snakes all over the battlefield, but like not really focused.
Yeah, to clarify, the snake archer shoots snakes at people.
Yeah, I should just explain that. I thought that was obvious, but it's not a snake that fires arrows, it's an archer that fires snakes. And so the snake archer is waiting to reload, but like you can't tell he's in the process of doing anything. He's just standing there. And then the other guy doesn't really have any attacks. He just has his arms, which he kind of flails, but he gets too close and he kind of just like wraps his arm around the other guy's neck and just kind of hugs him for a while. And it's just like waiting to see how that will resolve, is a lot of fun. And, it has a surprise ending.
It's just the sort of, it's the fact that they try and kill each other by any means they can possibly come up with. But it's always dumb, and that's what makes it kind of charming. Like, even the units that are designed to do a particular thing are particularly good at it, like the Minotaur that picks up a guy in each hand and is just running around, like bashing them into each other and things. It's great. It's like, it'd be like if you spent an hour setting up for a big game of Warhammer or something, and then just resorted to throwing your models at each other. It's like a food fight. It's great. Really, really good.
I would love them to do a daily challenge. And like the leaderboard would be meaningless because it's so random, but it would still be, I just want like a different thing every day to play on this.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is like, the thing it doesn't have is really any kind of judging how well you did. Like, I started trying to figure out, like, how many points can I have left over? How can I win and have loads of, with spending the minimum amount of points?
Yeah, I thought it was going to judge me on that.
Yeah, which would be like, if this was an electronics game, that's what it would ask me to do. And like, it made me think that because it's structured like that. It has a structure of a puzzle game, really. And all of the games that we play that are like this are usually pretty hard. Like, I really bounced off Barbarous You despite loving the concept, because I just got to the point where I was just like, fuck this. I'm not smart enough. Which is was also my Stephen sausage roll problem and, this kind of thing. Whereas this is so easy that I'm really enjoying it, but also there's no meaningful way to Also, there's probably, maybe it's possible to be good at it. If you're good at it, are you missing the point? Like, sometimes I worry that I've broken it because there'll be some interesting scenario and the bard and 50 archers thing wins again because of just the way the AI works and the fact that there are certain things that are hard to avoid and one of them is chasing this bard. But yeah, like, maybe a score system would be good, but to be honest, I'd just be happy for them to just keep adding toys to it, basically. Yeah. Just fun interactions and things to do.
Yeah, it's one of the few games. I mean, I was so excited about it that I was going to play it in early access, even though I don't normally do that. But also I think it'll be especially good to be playing while they add stuff to it.
Yeah, right. I'll totally log back in just to play with a new whatever, figure out how they work. It's very good. Shall we do some questions?
Yes.
I mean, are you okay? Or would you like to do some questions? Or?
I don't make the rules. This is just the bit where I say that.
Yeah, but, I mean, you sound stressed. Do you need to talk about it?
No. Okay. Just because you've managed to adopt a kind of therapist pose. No, hang on.
That's what therapists do.
No, because you're lying down now, so you're in therapy.
Yeah, you're the therapist, Chris.
Oh, God. Well,
maybe you are, Tom.
Well, I have my legs crossed in a sort of...
You're like that therapist in
position.
Bones, the one who takes his shoes off and gets comfy. And I can't remember whether he's a murderer or not, but
Well, it's Bones, so there's a 50-50 chance. I've only seen like 1 or 2 seasons of Bones, but I'm very much enjoying your tweets on it, Pip.
I've finished now.
To feel really good about my decision to not watch anymore.
Yes. They don't get any more professional. Just FYI.
because I watched a lot of Bones with you. I didn't watch all of it, but
yes.
I was there for the whole journey.
I mean,
we finished
I won't slow down. There's no passengers on this ride.
Yeah, exactly. Watched a lot of it, and then we started rewatching Buffy. And so I've had I think if someone had said 2019, Chris, it's David Boreanaz all day, I would have gone, why? But it is, nonetheless. It's just day in, day out.
I've been watching Angel as well.
Exactly.
So
I've been watching SEAL Team, which is a Spec Ops series with him in it. It's research for my game.
What a big, likeable, rectangular man he is.
He's very rectangular.
He's like a Minecraft man. It's incredible.
Sorry?
Could you get him to do your trailer?
Perhaps.
Then we could all hang out.
You might be out of my price range, which is 0. I mean, that's been my voice acting budget so far, so...
Explain to him how being an influencer works.
No.
Oh.
So I was just voicing Tom's answer, because Tom just sort of said nothing at all.
I don't know, was that a serious suggestion?
Because if he wants to be an influencer, he's got to start somewhere. So he should make
By being a voice actor.
By, by making friends with Tom and
he wishes he could break into the video game YouTube industry.
Yeah.
Because Minecraft's oversaturated. He's never going to make it big there.
Despite looking so much like a Minecraft.
And Fortnite's kind of,
Actually, Nathan Fillion also has a kind of boxy head, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, yeah.
Well, a Nathan Fillion, David Boreanaz Minecraft co-op adventure would be something I would buy.
Are they not... Could they be in the same thing? Have they ever been in the same thing? I feel like...
I'm not
saying...
They're both in Buffy, aren't they?
They are both in Buffy, yeah, because he plays... Well, but I'm not sure at the same time he plays... Yeah, a priest Caleb, I think. Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, you're right. They can both be in the same thing. That bit... It's dead.
Sorry to kill it with information.
Our first question comes from Jim, who writes, in a recent podcast, there was a discussion about recycling old games for cash, as well as the downsides of Google Stadia, and it reminded me of my own recent efforts to create an offline-enabled, subscription-free movie-watching setup at home. I was wondering if the CNC team had considered doing anything similar for PC gaming. So Jim goes on to describe, I'm going to sort of skip ahead a little bit, but it goes on to describe a setup basically entirely offline, DVD and Blu-ray players, nothing connected to Wi-Fi, and stacks and stacks of DVDs and Blu-rays. As a way of creating a setup, Jim writes, that allows me to watch my favorite movies and TV shows in the future without needing an internet connection, a contract, or a subscription with a media provider, and without feeling like I have a Silicon Valley billionaire sitting on my shoulder, judging me and selling my movie preferences to advertisers. I do realize that there are limitations to such a setup, but it does make me feel more like I can get off the grid and have a more relaxing time. Question is, do you think such a thing is necessary / useful for PC gaming? And if so, what would your doomsday vault look like? What equipment, games, or other objects would you include, and why? Also, what would you do to ensure that your go-to gaming experiences would genuinely last into the future? Great work on the pods. Jim.
Yeah, this has been a nice thing about the PC until now, at least, is that, like, it's so backwards compatible. There's still, things from the 90s that you can play, and when they're not, when they don't run on modern...
Mystery at the Orangery.
No?
No. Alas.
Is it...
Anyway,
what
that's
era is that?
I think maybe
is it DOS or Windows?
Windows 95.
Interesting.
But
because for DOS, there's DOSBox, and so, like, if it's far enough back, there's an emulator for it, and if it's more recent...
I tried to run it using a shell thing. I detailed my many complaints about this whole process a while ago, but yeah, but they also have the backwards compatibility mode on Windows 10, I think, but even that couldn't pick it up.
What was the name of the game again?
Monet, the Mystery at the Orangery, I think, is the thing. But basically, it's
so that's
just
going in your vault.
It's
some
a
capacity.
point and click.
You've got to have a Windows 95 machine in your vault.
That would be good, wouldn't it? Yeah. I've managed to extract the sound files. So, you've got things like someone saying, get your hot nuts here. And like
Wait, what is this game?
Come on, Monet, get your hot nuts.
Well, it's like, it's a murder mystery involving a bomb plot,
Okay.
So and Monet.
The hottest nuts.
So, would you say that Monet's paintings are more of a feature in it, or Monet himself?
Like, the environments are very Monet-inspired.
Okay.
But there's a bomb plot.
But there's a bomb plot.
Very impressionistic bomb.
So, and I think there's a clown at some point. I can't remember. Anyway, so back to the question.
I was watching Ocean's 11 or Ocean's 12 recently. I watched both. But one of them mentions the difference between Monet and Monet.
Yeah.
Are they actually two different artists?
Hang on. Monet and Manet. They're two different artists.
In the movie, it's definitely Monet and Monet. Which I thought were two different ways of pronouncing Monet, but...
Yeah.
Hang on.
History of art degree, go.
No, but maybe they meant Janelle Monet?
Okay, yeah, they're two different people.
But like, Claude Monet.
Or just the concept of money.
But yeah, there is an artist called Manet who...
Yeah. Unless the Americans say that in a really weird way.
I don't know what they could mean, unless I'm just bad at this, which is also possible.
This is the true mystery at the Orangery.
Monet had a
They do
wife.
think that we say potato. Which I've never quite got my head around.
Yeah, that's true. That seems reasonable. Anyway,
what would you keep, just standing still thinking about, potato?
it's interesting.
Reading Potato Weekly.
Taps into a lot of questions about preservation of games and archiving more broadly, because at some point, a lot of games that I'm into or have been into will be sunsetted, essentially, because it won't be worth keeping the servers online, and therefore they will fall to either fans to maintain in some way or just disappear forever, like City of Heroes or something, but,
Yeah.
And so I think for those things, like, Dota, it would... I think obviously you could survive it in some form, but it wouldn't be the format that exists right now, and you would engage with it in a different flavour, a different way, a different, it would represent a different population of players.
Yeah.
Possibly just you and a load of bots. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing for me that would make me nervous about any kind of archival kind of solution for even just playing my own games in a basement somewhere is like just the reliability of PC hardware. Like obviously DVD players and things will break. But broadly speaking, there's more that can go wrong with PC. So I think a big part of it would be just backups of everything, like having all the games backed up on USB drives probably, or solid state drives of some kind, so there's not many moving parts that can break or disks that can break. And then having like a relatively reliable PC build and then 5 copies of every individual bit of hardware involved in that build, apart from maybe the case, so that you can replace every part of it, which is a lot of effort to go to just to make sure that you can play things indefinitely. But
and like, you'd have to ration yourself. You just have to be like, okay, how many cans of compressed air versus how many cans of Spam do I need for this?
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
I think, touch wood, which I'm not, but I can't
The
find any wood.
windowsill.
Okay. But my PC is not, I haven't had to replace anything on my PC for a very long time, because I was listening to, I was trying to find when Marsh talked about Halfway on this podcast, so I was interested in playing that game, and I tried to play it and didn't like it, and I wanted to know what he liked about it. And so I looked up the Crate and Crowbar where he talked about it, and it was a very early one, like in our first year, I think. And in that podcast, I talk about I've just bought a new PC for Saints Row 4.
Man.
Weirdly, because that was the only thing that didn't run well on my last PC. I think there was, and VR, I think I was trying to get ready for. And that was the last time I upgraded, I'm pretty sure. And that was a very long time ago now. Like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so I mean, obviously they can last a while, but that's the thing, that would be the thing that would concern me about if your goal was like, I want a solution that could potentially last me years and years and years and years and years after the apocalypse, let's say, or the collapse of the internet or something like that.
Also, you know, power sources and, you know, I mean, obviously that's just getting into the very basics of, you know, survivalism.
All right. Well, maybe to pivot it away from just the basic necessities, what games would you keep?
So I think the other problem that I would encounter with the kinds of games I would want to keep is that I like the seeing what people do with things and how they develop them. So I play a lot of Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, and I know it's not a PC game, but it's something that I go back to a lot and have played every day, I think, for the last year and a bit, possibly a year and a half at this point. And it's like, the reason I keep going back is because they keep adding new items and they keep adding villages that I have cared about on different platforms, or, you know, I get a little thrill of setting up my campsite anew.
Yeah.
And I think that without an external person making things that then come as a surprise to me, a lot of games would lose their appeal.
So it's the sort of feeling that they're living things.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm automatically more interested in Sims 4 than Sims 3 because Sims 3 is a closed system at this point, right? I mean, obviously mods and things, but again, that's external content that I hadn't, you know, worked on myself or figured out.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I would probably stick with things that I love in a way that is so tied to things like childhood, like Ocarina of Time. Like, that they have a place in my games brain that new games can't easily break into. I think Subnautica is the only other one that would come close.
It's a shame because I mostly like single player games, and that mostly means that, you know, this question is easy for me. It's just all my favorite games. But annoyingly, the daily challenge for things like Spelunky and Slay the Spire is an online only thing. Like, it has to connect to the server to get the daily challenge. And that isn't technically necessary. Obviously, it's necessary for leaderboards, but the daily challenge in Heat Signature just goes by your system clock. It just looks at whatever the system time is. It doesn't need to connect to the internet. We don't do any kind of verification or security or anything. When you submit your score, obviously you need to be online, and we check that against some stuff. But the content itself is all local. The game itself is, you know, figures out how to make the daily challenge from your date. There's no server that's giving you that stuff. And so Heat Signature would survive the bunker thing. You could play the daily challenge in Heat Signature. You wouldn't be able to see your friends' scores, obviously. But stuff like Spelunky and Slay the Spire, which is, I can imagine, like, if I was cut off from society and I wanted to play games for a long time, daily challenge would be a really good thing to, like, you know, have just playing a little bit of each game every day would be great, but you couldn't do it because they all get it from the server.
I think I would just load up on big, chunky CRPGs.
Oh, yeah.
I think Baldur's Gates and Pillars and Divinity and Torment and Dragon Age and things, because basically the two things. One, story, please. Tell me a long story about wizards. The world has ended. And I've run out of beans because I have 18 different backup hard drives instead of food. But also like quite systemsy games where it's like feels very different to do like, I'm going to do a wizard playthrough. I'm going to do a level 1 playthrough. I'm going to, do a solo playthrough. I'm going to do a full party playthrough. Or my party is bears in the manner of Chris Livingston. Like all of these different sort of ways you can play those games. I think they have the longevity power. Not that that's necessarily the answer for like, what do you want to archive forever, but it'd be my answer for, what would I fill a hard drive with, I think.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that would mean that the way you, Tom, play, like Dishonored.
Dishonored would be one of mine.
Work well, because you do a lot of experimentation, whereas I'm very much just, it's always going to be chaos and always going to result in dragging bodies back to one room over and over until the level is basically clean and I can just wander around. So I think, there's a certain amount of how you play that feeds into the value proposition of like replaying or figuring stuff out, which is interesting. I don't know, maybe I would just pick a game that I haven't played before but that I know had like a really rapid release cadence, and like obviously if tech and money was kind of no object, like try and set it to drip feed that to me over a slower period of time, so that I would keep having new things that I wasn't expecting, but that I could, get to grips with.
Just have a game developer trapped in another room.
Well, for me, it's a self-solving problem. I could bring Unity and Game Maker, but I'd be really interested to know, like, I always think, well, like, Heat Signature was fun to play after I made it. Gunpoint was not, because it was just 3 hours long and I'd played those 3 hours a million times, whereas Heat Signature is generating stuff. So it'd be interesting, like, what kind of games would you make if you were the only audience for it? Like, no one else can ever play this because the world is destroyed.
Yeah, you're not going to make puzzle games, are you?
Yeah, no. And probably not comedy games either.
Yeah.
Or not pre-written comedy anyway.
No.
You'd probably make Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. I think that's something I would make for myself.
Yeah, right.
If
I could.
Just before I left PC Gamer, I found that old issue where you and Graham and Craig Pearson all did like a 24-hour game jam or 48 hours or something, and made your own game, and you just made blocks fall on a man's head and thought it was hilarious.
You're talking about my seminal classic Blunt Force Trauma.
Yes.
Which totally changed the genre.
What genre was that?
The genre of people trapped in small rooms with large heavy objects falling on their head.
And you were just it's win-win. Like, if you avoid the thing, then it's good for you, and if you don't, it's hilarious.
Yeah. This is a source engine, so it's basically a mod really, because I was using the source engine. But it was, you're in a confined space and heavy objects fall on your head. The idea was you're supposed to dodge them, and then the idea is they'd stack up and you could climb on them to get out. And I can't remember how well that worked in the practice, but I do remember at the very end, I started to introduce NPCs that you also had to, like, I guess you couldn't really protect them, but like, you didn't want, they would get crushed by stuff and you wanted to make sure it wasn't you who got crushed. But if you managed to save them somehow, I can't remember how you saved them. Maybe you could catch things out of the air. Then
I think you could jump on them maybe, or like somehow, like there was something that you'd done that you weren't expecting to do.
So the thing that was supposed to happen is that, in fact, I think it worked for the player, is at the end of the level, if you complete it, I apply an upward force to you that sucks you into the ceiling, and yeah, it was supposed to be you were climbing on this stuff, but that didn't work out, so it was too hard in the time I had. So I just made it so if you survive it, we suck you into the ceiling, and that takes you to the next level. But with the NPCs, there's some kind of, the source engine has some kind of corrective code that puts them back on the floor. And so they were being sucked up by the force that I'd added and then put back on the floor by the source engine. And so it looked like they were jumping up and down, which actually was kind of perfect for like, you just won and they all just jump up and down.
Help, this is torture for us.
We're still alive.
Ah, good.
So that's what you would do.
That's in the vault.
Weirdly, not IGF nominated, that one.
The thing is though, I was like looking through that and going, hang on. Craig went to work for a studio and Graham is working on his own game, which seems to be getting funding and is promising, and you, and I was like, maybe we should hold this fucking game jam again. Like, what am I doing?
Have we mentioned Primetime Detective on this podcast?
I'm sure we have.
It'll be playable at Rezzed if you're there when you're listening to this.
And it has previously been at EGX, I believe, so you may have seen it there.
Game. It's nice.
Yeah, it's got art now. Yeah, looks lovely.
Did we answer the question?
I can't remember what the question was.
Okay.
The next question comes from Kane. Kane writes, best sandwich? Regards, Kane.
Is that a question, or is it just like a best sandwich? Like
There's a question mark, I think.
There's a question mark.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe Kane was just having a nice sandwich.
Oh, best sandwich. No, it's a question.
I think mine might have been one I had when I was camping out at Valve, squatting in their offices, and they often, if they had like guests for a meeting or something, they would have better catering for them. And I stole some of that. And there was, I guess the bread was like focaccia, but it was kind of like sweet, and it was extremely soft and just like almost like cake.
Is that not a brioche?
It was kind of denser than a brioche and looked like focaccia. And then the contents are also like, I don't know, there's some kind of cheese in it. There's some kind of like spicy, sweet pepper. And it was just way sweeter than you expect a savory sandwich to be, but it was amazing. And also like extremely like fatty and had some salami and stuff in it.
Cool.
And rocket. Or arugula, as it was called locally.
There's a sandwich that they used to do in Pret that they don't do anymore, and every time I go in there, I have a little look, and they still don't do it, and I feel very angry. And then sometimes that's enough to make me just leave.
Oh, wow.
It was one of their hot wraps, which, fine, come at me if you don't think that's a sandwich. I don't care.
Wrap.
I don't care. It's bread around a thing.
He's told me that'd be the case, and I tested it, and it was true. So.
But it was like I think it was a bean chili kind of hot wrap with some cheese in it and avocado.
That sounds like a burrito, Pip.
Now look, it wasn't though, was it? Because it was a wrap. A hot wrap.
No, I thought you said it was a sandwich.
In the sandwich area.
A burrito's a sandwich, Pip.
Now look, this shop is known for its sandwiches, is it not? Pret sandwich.
Is a burrito also a sandwich?
Pardon?
Is a burrito also a sandwich?
So burrito is kind of a bag, is it not?
But a wrap is not a bag.
It's an edible bag. No, because a wrap has holes at each end.
Okay,
right.
So a fajita is a sandwich, but not a bag.
A taco is a sandwich.
Look, I don't want to get drawn into this semantic skullduggery because, quite frankly, it doesn't matter. That's how I felt when I wanted a sandwich, was like I wanted one of those. And, you know...
I'm with you on this, and I don't think the semantics are important, but I'm fascinated by how Americans in particular seem totally fixated on this. Like, is a hot dog a sandwich? Is a hamburger a sandwich? And they will just talk about it for hours.
It doesn't matter.
But they describe a pizza as a pie, so...
Yeah, what the hell?
No, and then they don't seem to understand savoury pies, and I'm like, you've got a fucking pizza pie. Like, that's a savoury pie then.
Oh wait, they don't have savoury pies?
Down that route.
Huh.
Well, because, like, when you try and explain steak and kidney pudding pie, whatever. Cause then you go down
steak and
that
kidney pudding pie.
No, because then you go down that cul-de-sac of when is a pie a pudding.
Yeah, and
when's a Yorkshire pudding?
In fairness, the British definition of pudding is a weird and nebulous thing.
And you sort of then have to explain suet. And then people just start looking at you and you're like, now look.
I wonder if suet is related to rennet.
No,
maybe.
It's just animal fat, isn't it? It's animal fat.
Yes, it is, yeah. I think Tom was doing a joke then.
Oh.
But,
sorry, I thought it was... No, suet.
Yeah.
Suet, rennet. Yeah, I get it now.
Ooh.
Jeremy Rennet.
Also good.
Vital
it could be
ingredient.
David Boreanaz thing.
So imagine if
you just drop Hawkeye and some milk, you get yourself some cheese.
It's like, now what you want to do? No, I don't
Yeah.
know. But that is a sandwich of which I was
What,
fond.
Jeremy Renner in some milk?
No. And which I am permanently to be denied, apparently.
What?
Every time I liked a sandwich in the Boots meal deal, they would discontinue it within a few weeks. I feel like
Yeah, I think my
they
longest...
detected me liking it.
My longest blunch relationship has been with the Philadelphia and ham.
Is blunt short for Boots lunch?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Just to check.
Yep. There is nothing sadder than a blunch at 2 p.m. when all of the good sandwiches have gone and all of the mediocre sandwiches have gone, and
tell
you've
you what,
just got the shit sandwiches.
They do a good line in very low calorie sweet stuff though. Those like chocolate covered kind of nougat type bars that are like 80 calories somehow, but they're like delicious.
Huh.
Again, not a sandwich.
No.
It's chocolate sandwich.
Part of the meal deal, damn it.
Sandwich-related event.
I believe George Buckingham has the meal deal challenge where the idea is that you try and basically abuse it as much as possible to
What's the maximum value you can get?
I think they said that you win the meal deal challenge if you save more than you spend. So, if you manage to come up with a combination of items such that the meal deal price ceiling is absolutely doubled by the actual cost of the items and then some, which I always think of every time I go in, but I will not be moved from the Philadelphia and ham triangles because quite frankly ain't no one got time for that shit. Like, I'm not taking a risk on any more boot sandwiches.
It's just a risk you can't afford to take.
Well, it's just too much choice, and then they're like, which flavour water would you like? And you're like, why does there need to be more than one? What's happening? So it's all just a bit of a conundrum, and now you've added in this nougat nonsense.
Rather than the time-honoured grape bag.
Absolutely ridiculous. Well, no, because they have the normal crisp bags as the snack, which I usually get. But then they started making it so that the grab bags, which for people who don't know, are larger than normal bags of crisps. So essentially, you should probably go for the healthy option and have the normal size bag of crisps because of portion creep. But why would you? You're saving money. And so I feel
so you can get the bigger ones as part of the meal deal.
Yeah, so I feel very much victimised every time they're out of grab bags of prawn cocktail crisps because... Like, I'm not settling for a smaller bag because why would I when the option of the bigger bag is there? But then it means that I have to pick a different flavour and I'm not into that either. It's infuriating.
Chris, what's your sandwich?
Oh, yeah. I didn't realise I had that many opinions about sandwiches.
So our bagel's a sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right,
well, I mean, if you've got stuff inside them, if you're just sat there nomming on a bagel...
No. So, yeah.
That's probably not his favourite sandwich of all time. A plain bagel with nothing in it.
It's like, I like bread on its own.
Okay. No, smoked salmon cream cheese bagel for me, please. That's probably my favourite.
Capers or no?
Yeah, maybe. It depends on the bagel, I think. Like, sometimes I think they can overpower... If it's like a tasty bagel with nice seeds on it, sometimes a caper can overpower that with its... whatever, your tiny green vinegar bombs.
Did I tell you that I'm boycotting the bagel shop at the moment?
Why?
Because they were sassy with me via guacamole. And I'm not standing for that. Because I went in and I said, could I have a bacon bagel with... avocado or, the thing that looked like guacamole. And they didn't understand that those two were things that you would have together. And I'm like, this is the millennial world. Like, what are you talking about?
It's one of the best combinations.
I don't understand how you have owned a bagel shop for however long this is, or worked within one, and only just come across, I didn't know what to say. Is this your first day? What's happening? Have you not lived? And so the lady behind the counter was apparently so flustered that she put as much avocado as she could possibly fit in the the bagel with the bacon, and it became like the most messy, most awful, like it was a sarcastic amount of avocado. It was like, oh, you want avocado, do you? Well, you're gonna get
Let's see how you
avocado.
fucking like avocado.
Exactly. And it was just like the bagel had no structural integrity. But I was honestly fishing bits of bacon out at my desk while the sandwich just like slid apart from each other. It was awful. And then and the other thing is, you know how expensive they usually make guacamole?
And another
thing. Like, you have to pay, 70p for a teaspoon of avocado. I'm like, I could have brought my own. And then, like, there's this lady who's just apparently slapping whole fucking buckets of it in one sandwich.
Well, you won the meal deal challenge.
It's like, I don't... Anyway.
Did you see Chris Remo's story about the gin and tonic?
No.
Okay, so he's in an airport bar and he asks for a gin and tonic and the guy says, tonic, that's a vodka, right?
What?
He says,
What?
No, it's tonic water. I said, oh, okay. And then pours him like a glass of tonic water and then a glass of gin. And when he's halfway through pouring a glass of gin, Chris says, that's good, thanks. And the guy says, okay. And then like looks him in the eye and smiles whilst continuing to fill the whole glass of gin.
A gin and nearby tonic.
Hang on. So how much did you charge him for the gin?
I don't know.
Because actually, that's a great thing.
He's won the meal challenge as well.
If he had like a water bottle.
Only the meal deal covered gin and tonics.
And then could just fill that up with the gin and then just tell whoever on the plane to be like, just keep that tonic coming. Like, I'm good for the rest of this.
But on the subject of people who seem to lack the most basic requests of their job.
I mean, I'm not being weird, am I? Like, bacon and avocado is a thing.
It's a very good combo. Yeah.
That actually is one of my favorite sandwiches that I've made is, just like, Hovis, like multi-grain seeded batch bread is really fucking good. And that with avocado and some really crispy bacon, like.
Yeah, damn. Yeah. Like, crispy bacon and a nice spicy chili jam.
Oh, so I've had, when I did it was with, Mexicana chili cheese.
Ooh.
Like not too much of it, just a little bit, but that's very spicy.
That does sound good.
Yeah. Mm.
Basically bacon and anything that's kind of a bit creamy.
Yeah. I like, yeah, I do like the a little bit of spice with bacon though, it's nice.
I don't know, I quite like the
bacon's quite
purity of
earthy.
a bacon roll.
Yeah,
I remember,
of course, yeah.
Putting salt on a bacon sandwich and my dad telling me the bacon is salt. I'm thinking, Dad, I respect you and I usually believe everything you say. I don't think that's true.
Like, I mean, I can recommend my old, like, sort of hangover sandwich was, bacon, a fried egg, and a pinch of sage. With no sauce. Like,
frog in a cage, a witch's shoe, and a mermaid too.
What the hell?
No one else? Okay, cool. Sprig of sage, frog in a cage, you
Is
know.
this a witch's chant?
It's, I think it's from a book on tape that we used to listen to as children.
right.
And one of the stories was about making a potion for something, and I can't remember, but apparently the recipe has stuck with me. It goes on for a while after that, but I thought I'd stop because no one else knew what I was talking about.
No, because the thing is, right, so normally you'd slather it in brown sauce, which would be the correct sauce decision.
No.
But, yep. And that's the...
We'll get to that.
But a little bit of sage. It's nice. It's quite, it adds this sort
Yeah, I
of,
can
it's
believe
quite
that.
a sort of,
You do though, because what you do
Not a writer.
is every
Exactly.
every time you make that bloody sandwich.
I don't think I've made that since you've moved in.
Yeah, but I remember it because every time it was like, can you taste the sage? I put sage in this. And you're just like, oh my God.
Is it too much to ask for someone to appreciate the sage?
But like, I started just purposely not acknowledging it because then it would.
I'm glad that
If anything, it's taste of rosemary.
I'd just be like, it just tastes like bacon, and then you just be like, it's got some sage in there.
And miraculously, I kept cooking and wasn't dissuaded.
It's all coming out tonight.
From this brutal initial attempts to shatter my confidence in my ability to season.
I will also say that if you go to Greg's for one of their bacon rolls, and they say, which sauce would you like? Say a bit of both. Because actually, you get the vinegar of the brown sauce and you get the sweetness of the red sauce. It's great. Top tip from me to you.
Great. I'm glad that we've managed to get a full 35 minutes of podcast out of the first two questions.
I could keep going.
I know. Good question about sandwiches. Turns out that's where our real interest lies.
You can make anything a sandwich, I think.
That's just not true.
Put 2 slices of bread around it. That's a sandwich.
Did you hear about the world sandwich?
No.
They coordinated for someone, I think in the UK and someone in Australia, to put a piece of bread on the ground at the same time, so that the world would technically be the contents of the sandwich.
That's amazing. I like that. There's a piece of bread
apart from the 2 people
that
standing
might be
near.
Part of that, I guess. Like, I don't know where it's from. I don't know where it's going, but it's
Probably from a seagull, and it's going to a seagull.
No, but I mean, obviously, probably. But at the same time, it is the bum end of the loaf. So it's quite nice to think that maybe someone has put the other end of the loaf on the other end of the world, and actually it's a hole, and then there's just like a really long loaf of bread that's just spanning, the entire world, making toast at the core.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
What?
No, I mean, it's a reasonable supposition.
It is. I mean, it feels less reasonable now that you're looking at me like that. Anyway.
In many ways, the real sandwich was the world
that we made along the way.
It's got sage in it.
Wow, it's a bit of a bold thing to have claimed, Tom. It's a little bit of sage on it. Alex writes, I recently completed Into the Breach on Switch, by unlocking the secret squad and gaining every achievement. I remember Tom F saying that he ended up cheating thanks to the power of playing on PC, because some of the achievements are mad and not worth the time and effort. I wanted to counter this a little. Being forced to do it properly while playing the Switch version, that was in inverted commas, but I said it as if it were for emphasis, so I've actually thrown Alex under the bus a little bit there, but I didn't mean to. Involved getting deep into every system and mechanic the game has and coming out the other side. It was incredibly rewarding and satisfying, as you understood the ins and outs of every squad to not only get their individual achievements, but simply win a game with them too, which is hard enough by itself. On PC, yeah, I might have cheated and not put in the effort, but I'm glad I wasn't allowed that opportunity. So yeah, not a question, but some food for thought on the flexibility the PC gives us when gaming can result in us harming our own experience. I remember tweaking the difficulty in Teleglitch, fucking amazing stuff, just so I could make it past level 5, and soon abandoning it. I made it easier for myself and all interest went out the window. Why are we so adept at throwing ourselves into the fuzzy, shapeless dimensional void? Seriously, play Teleglitch. Bye. Alex.
Look, pal. I cheated for 1 achievement in Into the Breach. I got every other fucking one, and the last one left was play as the random squad and get like X time capsules in one island or something. And it's like, well, that just happens or it doesn't. It's up to the random generation as to whether I get that many capsules. I completed it as every fucking squad. Of course I did. I played it 180 hours. That was the only one. And it was just like, it wasn't interesting to pursue that. I had already gone through exactly the process they describe of, learning the ins and outs of each squad and, expanding your understanding the game through that stuff. And that one I just thought, well, this just isn't interesting. I just want the secret squad, so I needed to get it.
No further
and
questions.
I'm glad I did!
Well, unlike Tom, I don't feel the need to cheat in games. No, that's actually a lie. And also, I don't necessarily think that it's a case of ruining your own enjoyment. I figure, I would probably crash out of the game either through boredom or through my own fault. But if it's my own fault and I've tweaked the difficulty, then I might have got a bit further than the point where I would have just got frustrated and essentially rage quit. So you might not have stuck with Teleglitch. You don't know.
Yeah, I think just, I think maybe there is a case to which you can ruin things for yourself, but you probably know if you're reaching to do that, then you're probably not fully enjoying the game. And if you're having to be forced to enjoy a game by restrictions, how much do you enjoy that game?
I think something I would say is that games have, I think a few things recently have maybe done a better job with it, but games have historically not been very good with hint systems. And I think that those then become a weird, almost a gameplay loop in and of themselves. Like once you start using them, the incentive is to keep using them, or they don't help you deal with whatever the thing is that you weren't seeing to get past the hump in the first place. Like if you were not able to progress in, for example, a puzzle game, and you look up a solution, the solution, or if you get a hint as to how to progress, that might not necessarily tell you the problem with the way you were approaching it that you were running up against, and you might immediately run up against it in the next puzzle and therefore need a hint again. And I think it's hard to design a system that tries to figure out where someone is running into problems with something. And so you end up turning to maybe walkthroughs or online tip videos or whatever. And those, again, kind of brute force it. Like maybe you go, oh, okay, well, that's the thing I need to do, or that's the piece I'm missing for this thing. But it's skimmed over another thing that you maybe needed. So you're like, okay, well, I'm slightly further on physically in the game, but I don't know why, or it doesn't connect up to these other bits properly. So I think ends up like the ability to cheat, the ability to look up, the ability to access hints in a way that doesn't deal with the reason you weren't progressing in the first place. Like, all of those are problems that I think games haven't really solved yet. Mm. Sorry. That was an actual thought I had, and it wasn't about sandwiches.
Sorry for having an actual thought. That's good, because my answer was just ire.
And that is all of the questions / ire that we've got time for today, because we're up against time. Which I wanted to say as a little housekeeping note right at the end. We had some people ask if we were going to be doing anything at Rezzed. Pretty sure this podcast is going to go up a little bit before the weekend is fully underway, because I'm traveling for Rezzed. But we as a podcast are not going to be doing the traditional Rezzed live show this year. The timing just didn't really work out, because the days of the show shift around a little bit. I think we'll all be there at different points. Mm-hmm. Certainly all of us in this room will be. So do say hi if you see us and recognize us for whatever reason. But we're not doing the live pod this year. So it's just going to be business as usual pod wise this week and next. If you would like to send us a question for next week's episode, we do have a little backlog as well. That we will get through. So thank you if you already sent us a question. You can do so by emailing us questions@crateandcrowbar.com or tweeting us at crateandcrowbar. As ever, you can find our community on Discord. The link for that is in the show notes and on our website at crateandcrowbar.com. And thank you as ever to our Patreon backers who make podcasts do by giving money to Patreon. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/crateandcrowbar. There's a youtube.com/crateandcrowbar. And assorted internet services beyond these, one imagines. Who knows what they might be and what I might have forgotten. Tom Francis's Twitter handle is
at Pentadact, PENTADACT.
Fantastic. Thanks. Pip?
Well, I thought you were...
What's your Twitter handle?
Am I the only one on Twitter now?
I was doing a joke. It clearly backfired.
I see. I'm at Philippa War, which is PHILIPPAWARR.
Fantastic. And I'm at C Thurston. That's CTHURSTEN. This one isn't a joke this time. Thanks.